On this quiet day in American history, four lives come gently into focus, each different in calling, yet united by lasting influence. A songwriter whose words carried the heart of a nation, a statesman who believed unity was worth the risk of loss, an athlete who mastered restraint as much as power, and a young girl whose courage arrived long before applause ever followed. Their journeys crossed music halls, government chambers, ballparks, and city streets, shaping culture not through noise, but through resolve. Today is not marked by spectacle, but by reflection. In remembering these lives, the nation pauses to honor contributions that outlived headlines and moments that quietly redirected history. What remains is not absence, but legacy, etched into songs, laws, games, and conscience itself. The news was confirmed quietly in the early hours of January 7, 2026, as Nashville woke to the loss of a man whose voice was rarely heard, yet deeply known. Jimmy Ray McBride had passed away, leaving behind a silence that felt familiar to country music, because his greatest work had always lived in the background. He was not the face on stage, but the words in the song, carrying emotion from one heart to another. Born on April 28, 1947, McBride came of age in a time when country music was built on stories, honesty, and lived experience. From his earliest days, he showed a gift not for attention, but for listening. Friends from his early years often recalled how he noticed small moments, turning everyday feelings into lines that felt timeless. Those instincts would guide a career shaped by patience and discipline rather than fame. Songwriting, for McBride, was never about quick success. It was about craft. He spent years writing for others, learning how to step aside so a song could belong fully to the artist singing it. That restraint became his signature. Over time, his words found their way into the voices of legends like Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Reba McEntire, George Jones, Waylon Jennings, and Randy Travis. Each song carried something personal, yet open enough for millions to claim as their own. By the height of his career, McBride had written 5 #1 songs, 10 top 10 singles, and 18 that reached the top 40. These were not songs built for trends. They were built for memory. One Nashville producer later reflected, Jimmy wrote like he understood silence. He knew when a song needed space to breathe. That understanding made his work endure long after charts faded. Despite his success, McBride remained largely behind the scenes. He avoided spotlight interviews and rarely spoke about his achievements. Those close to him said he believed the song should always speak first. A fellow songwriter once shared, Jimmy never chased recognition. He chased truth, and somehow recognition followed anyway. The list of artists who recorded his work grew across decades, spanning generations and styles. From Alabama to Toby Keith, from Chris Christopherson to Lone Star, his songs crossed eras without losing relevance. They were played on long drives, quiet nights, and moments of personal change. In many homes, his words became part of family history, even if his name was not always known. In 2017, the music industry paused to formally honor what had long been understood. Jimmy Ray McBride was inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. The moment was understated, much like the man himself. Standing among peers, he accepted the recognition with humility. One attendee recalled that he spoke briefly, thanking the artists who trusted his words and the listeners who kept them alive. That induction did not change his rhythm. He continued to write, to mentor quietly, and to remain present in the creative community. Younger songwriters often described him as generous with time and honest in feedback. "He didn't tell you what would sell," one writer said. "He told you what would last." As news of his passing spread, tributes appeared not as loud declarations, but as shared memories. artists posted simple messages, lines from songs, and photographs from studio sessions long past. A country singer wrote online, "Jimmy gave us words when we didn't have any of our own. That's a rare gift." Another noted, "He understood the weight of a simple sentence." McBride's death marked the end of a life spent shaping American music without needing to stand at its center. His influence cannot be measured only by awards or chart positions, but by how often his lyrics surfaced in moments of reflection. His songs spoke of love, loss, resilience, and quiet hope, themes that do not age because people do not outgrow them. In the days following his passing, radio stations revisited his catalog, and listeners were reminded how deeply his work was woven into familiar melodies. Some heard songs they had known for years, only then learning the name behind the words. That discovery felt fitting. Jimmy Ray McBride had always allowed the music to arrive first. He leaves behind a legacy defined by trust. Artists trusted him with their voices. Audiences trusted him with their feelings. And the industry trusted that his work would stand the test of time. In a world often drawn to spectacle, McBride proved that quiet dedication could shape culture just as powerfully. As country music continues to evolve, his songs remain, steady and unchanged, waiting to be rediscovered by new generations. They will be sung by voices yet unheard, in rooms yet imagined, carrying the same emotional truth they always have. Jimmy Ray McBride's life did not end with a final performance or public farewell. It ended the way it was lived, softly. Yet his words continue to travel, from radio waves to living rooms, from one listener to another. In that enduring exchange, his presence remains, not as a memory alone, but as a living part of the music he loved. The world learned of George Vasiliou's passing on January 13, 2026, with a quiet acknowledgment of a life devoted to principle and service. In the streets of Nicosia, the early morning light seemed to pause as news spread. He was not only a former president but a man who had lived with the belief that leadership was measured by integrity rather than applause. For a nation often divided by history, his passing marked the end of a chapter defined by steadfast commitment to unity. Born on May 20, 1931, Vasiliou grew up in Cyprus with an entrepreneurial spirit that would later shape his approach to governance. His early ventures in business reflected both ingenuity and patience, qualities that would become hallmarks of his public life. Friends recalled a young man who listened more than he spoke, who measured decisions carefully, and who carried a deep sense of responsibility for those around him. In 1988, he assumed the presidency of Cyprus during a time when the nation faced entrenched political divisions and lingering conflicts. His tenure was defined by reform, economic, social, and political. He worked to modernize governance, dismantling intrusive surveillance systems that had eroded trust between citizens and the state. One political analyst later said, "Vasiliou believed that government should serve people, not monitor them." That conviction guided every policy he introduced. Despite his ambitions, his time in office was not without challenge. Electoral defeat in 1993 could have silenced a lesser leader, but Vasiliou remained active in public life. He continued to advocate for diplomacy, transparency, and reconciliation, quietly influencing legislation and civic initiatives. A former colleague shared, even out of office, his presence was felt. He never stopped working for Cyprus, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. Vasiliou's approach to leadership was subtle yet transformative. He sought dialogue over division and compromise over confrontation, often placing principle above personal or political gain. His policies on economic reform strengthened industries and created new opportunities for citizens, while his diplomatic efforts offered a vision for peaceful coexistence in a region historically marked by tension. In every decision, he considered both immediate impact and lasting legacy. Throughout his life, Vasiliu balanced public service with personal humility. He avoided ostentation, valuing quiet reflection over public spectacle. Even after leaving office, he remained a mentor to younger politicians and a guide to civic organizations. A journalist who covered his later years wrote, "He embodied the idea that influence does not require position." He showed that calm, reasoned leadership can change the course of a nation without fanfare. The impact of his passing was felt immediately. Citizens shared memories of initiatives that improved daily life, of a president who listened to every voice, and of a figure whose integrity inspired trust across political divides. Tributes appeared across media, highlighting not only his accomplishments but the ethical compass that guided them. Social media posts noted, "He taught us that courage isn't loud. It's consistent. It's quiet, and it lasts longer than a speech." George Vasiliu's legacy is measured not only in policies but in values. He reminded the nation that leadership is a responsibility, not a reward, and that reconciliation is a sign of strength, not weakness. His life illustrated that progress is not always dramatic, often it is the careful work behind the scenes, the decisions made with foresight and conscience, that define history. As Cyprus reflects on his life, the lessons of George Vasiliu endure. Future leaders may study his methods, citizens may remember his example, and the nation may continue to benefit from the reforms he championed. In death, as in life, he leaves a framework of integrity, courage, and thoughtful leadership. His story is a quiet testament to the power of service and the enduring impact of a life lived with principle. The sun sets over the Mediterranean, and in that fading light, there is a sense of gratitude. George Vasiliu's presence may no longer walk the streets of Cyprus, but his influence remains in the structures he helped shape, the people he inspired, and the values he championed. In every act of civic responsibility, in every choice toward reconciliation, a part of him continues, a reminder that true leadership is measured not by the titles one holds, but by the lives one touches. Tragic news was confirmed on January 11, 2026, as the baseball world mourned the passing of David John Giusti Jr., a pitcher whose quiet excellence left an indelible mark on the game. Known for his precision on the mound and calm demeanor off it, Giusti redefined what it meant to be a relief pitcher, turning a specialized role into an art form. His loss is felt not only in stadiums but in the hearts of teammates, fans, and the generations of players who learned from his example. Born in 1939, Giusti's early years were shaped by a love for the game that ran deeper than statistics or headlines. Coaches and teammates often recalled his focus and patience, qualities that made him a natural closer in high-pressure situations. "David never rushed," a former manager said. "He prepared, he studied, and he trusted his process. That's why he always delivered." His approach was methodical, yet it carried a quiet intensity that demanded respect. Giusti made his major league debut at a time when relief pitching was still finding its identity. Over 15 years, he became a cornerstone of every team he joined, most notably the Pittsburgh Pirates. There, his careful preparation and ability to maintain composure under pressure contributed to 5 National League Eastern Division titles. The pinnacle came in 1971 when he helped the Pirates capture the World Series, a triumph that symbolized both personal mastery and team cohesion. Off the field, Giusti's influence extended beyond numbers. Younger players often sought his guidance, and he gave it generously, though always indirectly. He taught by example, one former teammate recalled. "You watched him, and you learned how to handle adversity, how to stay calm when everything else is chaotic." That mentorship, rooted in patience and integrity, became as much a part of his legacy as the victories themselves. Throughout his career, Giusti was celebrated for consistency and professionalism rather than flamboyance. In an era of loud personalities and dramatic moments, he remained measured, letting performance speak louder than words. Sports writers frequently noted his reliability, the pitcher who could enter a game in the ninth inning, maintain control, and leave the crowd and manager confident that the game was in capable hands. Even after retirement, Giusti's connection to baseball endured. He attended games, spoke at clinics, and offered counsel to rising pitchers. Fans remembered him not only for the dramatic moments on the mound but for the quieter ones, a nod of encouragement to a struggling rookie, a thoughtful analysis shared in the dugout, or a simple act of sportsmanship that went unnoticed by many. Social media posts following his passing reflected this respect. David Giusti didn't just pitch. He showed us how to play the game with honor, one comment read. Another noted, his calm presence taught more than any speech ever could. Giusti's passing reminds the baseball world that excellence is often built quietly, one disciplined moment at a time. He demonstrated that skill, preparation, and humility can leave a lasting impression equal to any championship or record. While the numbers in his career tell part of the story, the lessons he imparted through conduct and mentorship echo far beyond the diamond. As the sun set on January 11, 2026, fans, former teammates, and players alike reflected on a life lived with patience and dedication. David Giusti Jr. may have left the stadiums of the major leagues behind, but his influence remains in the routines of pitchers, the ethos of teams, and the memories of those who witnessed his craft. In every steady pitch, every calm moment under pressure, and every lesson passed quietly from one player to another, his legacy endures. David Giusti's story is a reminder that greatness often unfolds in silence. His life, devoted to precision, mentorship, and quiet professionalism, continues to inspire. The mound may be empty, but the lessons he left behind remain a lasting tribute, proof that the art of the pitch is as much about character as it is about skill. Tragic news was confirmed on January 13, 2026, as the nation remembered Claudette Colvin, a quiet hero whose courage at just 15 years old helped shape the course of American history. In the streets of Montgomery, Alabama, where her act of defiance first took place, the morning air seemed heavier with reflection. Long before the world knew her name, Colvin had taken a stand that required extraordinary conviction, refusing to give up her bus seat in a city defined by segregation. That single act, simple yet profound, would ripple through the nation in ways that would only be fully understood decades later. Born in 1939, Claudette Colvin grew up amid the harsh realities of racial inequality. Her youth was marked by a deep awareness of justice and the courage to act upon it. On March 2, 1955, she became one of the first to challenge the laws enforcing bus segregation. Arrested for her refusal, she faced police, courts, and social scrutiny with a maturity beyond her years. Her role in the Browder v. Gale case helped dismantle the legal framework of segregated public transportation, yet her name remained largely absent from headlines at the time. Colvin's story reminds us that courage often goes unnoticed in its early moments. While Rosa Parks' later protest received widespread attention, Colvin's actions had already set the stage for historic change. Claudette acted when it mattered most, without expecting recognition, a civil rights historian reflected. Her bravery was not performative, it was real, and it was necessary. Despite her youth, she understood that standing for justice sometimes carries personal cost. In the years that followed, Colvin led a life of quiet dignity. She worked as a nurse aide, serving her community with humility and dedication. Friends and family often spoke of her steadfast character, noting that her early courage continued to guide her daily choices. She carried herself with quiet strength, a former colleague said. Claudette never sought the spotlight, but but she always held firm to what she believed was right. Recognition came slowly, but her impact was undeniable. Scholars, civil rights organizations, and later generations came to honor her contribution, acknowledging that the fight for equality had many unsung heroes. Social media and public tributes highlighted her resilience. Claudette Colvin taught us that age does not limit courage. She showed that one act can change the course of history. Her passing marks a moment for reflection, for understanding the full measure of bravery and conviction. Claudette Colvin's life demonstrates that lasting change often begins quietly, outside public acclaim, and with a commitment to principle rather than applause. Her story resonates today, reminding us that history is shaped by those willing to act when it is hardest, even when the world is not watching. As the nation honors her memory, her legacy endures in the laws she helped reform, the hearts she inspired, and the countless lives influenced by her courage. Claudette Colvin's name may have been overlooked for decades, but her impact was never diminished. In every act of justice, in every refusal to yield to oppression, her presence is felt, a lasting tribute to a life defined by moral courage, integrity, and unshakable resolve.